It's nice to be here at the ICD seat in Berlin. I will be speaking about political institutions, parliamentary diplomacy, multiculturalism. I will be drawing a lot on my own personal experiences, which go now some way back. This is my profile, and I'm giving you your profile to show you that what I'll be saying has a background to it. I've been a member of parliament since 1996. 1998, I was appointed junior minister with specific responsibilities for sports, youth affairs, vocational education, science and technology. It was a time when in Malta we were not yet members of the European Union, but the process had really started. So it was a time when we were dealing both with institutions like the European Union in the venture for membership, but because of my own specific roles, I was also dealing with the Council of Europe, with the Commonwealth Parliamentary Union. So even later on, I will be comparing these institutions and their work in multiculturalism. Eventually, in 2003, I was re-elected and I was appointed Minister for Youth and the Arts. And the year after, they changed my portfolio for me, Minister for Urban Development and Roads. Possibly there's not much culture into that, but yes, there is. But because in urban development, there's a lot of work in regeneration. You will be working with local council, with assessing the culture of places, and also trying to bring in also some culture into infrastructure projects. Since 2008, I've had some new experience, head of delegation of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, which is a parliamentary union bringing in all countries of the Mediterranean. It has its General Secretariat in Malta, so the Maltese delegation is quite important. And also since 2010, I'm chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Planning and the Environment. So, all societies are changing. I'm not saying anything new. We're experiencing a growing secularism, like religions are not as important as they were once. The effects of the media, which brings into all recipients messages of different lifestyle. Consumerism culture, we are all the time bombarded with advertisements which make us change our spending patterns, or they try to make us change our spending patterns. Exposures to different lifestyles brought by tourism and migration. I don't know whether you experience this in Germany, but we experience this in Malta quite a lot. We have a big tourism industry, so our entertainment places double up as the entertainment places of tourists, so there's all this mix for young people all the time. It brings new concepts of lifestyles. And as well, we are also experiencing big waves of migration, whereas Malta was quite a homogeneous country up till maybe 20 years ago. One religion, mostly all Maltese. Now there are communities from Somalia, from sub-Saharan Africa, whole villages. Some of them gain movement. They can work. They are being integrated in some places of work, but also that brings in changes. Obviously, what is also causing this change in society is mobility of workers. When countries are doing well, they become magnets for other workers coming from abroad. For example, in Malta, we have a very strong IT industry and international gaming industry, which brings a lot of these companies to work in Malta. And obviously, living alongside these new people also brings its changes. What is common? So, what is common is that all ethnic groups aspire for genuine participation. I think we are all witnessing this in what is happening in North Africa. We used to think that these are people who accepted that they have government where there's no pluralism. We are seeing that that is not true. Inclusivity, freedom to wear their ideas, the chance for every member of society to contribute to the shaping of their own life, and whatever group it is, whatever ethnic group, everyone wants a respect of the tradition and the values of that grouping. So we are seeing a globalization of lifestyle, like to a certain extent and to different degrees, lifestyles becoming similar, but on the other hand, contrasted by a desire for the affirmation of the individual characteristics of a region. I mean, take Catalonia. So Catalonia wants to be part of a bigger Europe, but on the other hand, it wants to affirm its independence, its language, and so forth. This dichotomy of aspirations. In turn, we are seeing the pull of countries to group together. I mean, we are living in a world which is becoming all the time more difficult to compete. So we see these regional political groupings. As I mentioned, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, but I was hearing the news yesterday, even Japan, Southeast Asia, South America. There are all the time these political groupings which aspire to come together to be able to negotiate better between them and compete better with the outside world. I mean, there's this desire. Usually, the most successful political regional groupings are those where countries are willing to concede something to that grouping. Why has the European Union become so strong? It's because countries have conceded part of their sovereignty for economic gain. I mean, economic gain is the market access to this big European market of 350 million people. And also they conceded their sovereignty in the aspiration that there be more peace. And I think that is something which we can say, at least in Europe, happened. The European Union has been promoting multiculturalism through its mobility program in education, youth, and work. In the first ministry I experienced, I was very much working with young people. My party was elected on the ticket joining the European Union in 1998. And one thing that we did really fast and with urgency and with intensity was to push these mobility programs. The thinking was, if you get young people acquainted with the opportunities out there, you will get more acceptance for this political aspiration. But the underlying philosophy is that we make people acquainted with unfamiliar cultures so that their prejudices for those cultures will fall, they will whittle away, and peace will stand a better chance. Obviously, there's a secondary argument to that. If we learn from other cultures, we become something better, and societies become richer. No? I mean, I always think of diets and the Mediterranean diet, which is a very rich diet, considered one of the best diets. But if you really think of it, it's a fusion of diets: the Greek, the Italian, the Turkish, and the Arabic. The EU does other things for multiculturalism. The recognition of languages. It promotes its cultural program, promotes its own film industry. Sometimes these are put across as possibly the most effective thing of defending a culture, like the promotion of languages in the European Union. I can't say that the recognition of Maltese as a language in its own right has made a tremendous difference to to the Maltese language itself, or to the acceptance of Maltese. I mean, it has created a lot of jobs for translators and so forth. But possibly other programs, like the cultural programs and the mobility programs, are even more effective. These are some of the logos of the mobility programs. So, intercultural dialogue. Intercultural dialogue as a means has been defined by the European Cultural Foundations as a means by which individuals and groups with different cultural backgrounds engage in an open and respectful exchange of views, share experiences, and ultimately develop a better understanding of each other's aspirations and practices of living together. It is also political measures designed to engender intercultural dialogue can be seen as strategic instruments to promote cultural diversity and cooperation, and also facilitate cohesion on the basis of human rights, solidarity, and fairness. So we have these two, this definition. However, practitioners, so we have the political institutions putting all these programs, making all these definitions, but practitioners like NGOs or the common people or the people not involved in any political practice, they feel alienated from these discourses and divisions. And I think we have to review how political institutions can promote multiculturalism better. How they can, and they can do it by at least two measures. The promotion of intercultural dialogue within their fora, so the promotion of dialogue itself, the promotion of inclusivity and equity in their programs. But those are the obvious ways, the dialogue and the inclusivity in the thinking about the programs. But one of the problems is that the debates in the political institutions do not necessarily filter down. So, I mean, you need a solution. And this solution is to implement actions which bring out the symbiosis of the culture. So, my personal feeling is that the biggest contribution that political institutions can give to cultural dialogue is by promoting equity and justice, promoting civil society, taking initiatives for the eradication of material imbalances, harmonization of regulatory processes, and I will go into a bit of those. First of all, combating material imbalances. There cannot be a dialogue between two cultures if one culture is disadvantaged materially from each other. I mean, take what is happening in the Middle East, and some material imbalance does not mean difference in what you earn. It could also mean something like an everyday necessity, access to water, for example. Okay, so in order to try to fight against this, you have to affirm equality and equity also as well in other issues, in formal and informal education, access to a level of work opportunities, political representation. I was going to contrast a bit the work of the Council of Europe and the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean. It was part of my speech, but I'm being asked to hurry, so I have to really rush through this. And what I wanted to say is these are two institutions which are working through parliamentary diplomacy. They are both parliamentary assemblies, regional, but with possibly different effectiveness. And the difference in their effectivity is probably because of their structures, how good their structures are. The Council of Europe was founded immediately after the war. There was better push, possibly the will to invest more in it, even in terms of funding. So it's a very structured organization. It works constantly. I've worked with it in areas in youth, sports, and they are wonderful in bringing in civil society. For example, you are expected to do and review youth policies every 3 years. And every time you do a new youth policy, you do a hearing. And they bring in members of civil society from other member countries to review a policy which a minister somewhere else would be doing. And that's one way how you get even the workings of civil society in your working. I remember I was, at one point, it was 2002, 2003, enacting the first sports law in Malta. And I had a lot of resistance from the sports organizations because they thought, what, a sports law? I mean, someone is going to start really controlling us. And you would really want to get the ownership of those institutions. And the Council of Europe is quite strong, possibly even better than the European Union in that sector. And they have sports charter, they have sports for all charter. And they said, okay, let us do a hearing for you. We'll get you a panel of experts. You'll bring in your institutions, which are possibly opposing you. We'll make it and give it quite a big visibility. We did it in a parliamentary committee in Malta. You debate it, you take on stock what is being said, and you change. And so that is one excellent way of an institution which brings in civil society in its working. I am also a member of this, head of delegation, in fact, of this Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, which is something much more recent. It was founded in 2006. It does not have the funding of the Council of Europe. It has a permanent secretariat in Malta. But it does not have the permanence of institutions or the diversity of institutions or the consistency of its work. One thing I did not mention in the work of the Council of Europe is that they are constantly engaged in the drafting of conventions. And that's what we call multilateral harmonizations. Countries would be working on these conventions, and once they are adopted, they are taken on board. They become like even legal instruments in the member countries. Member countries work on without being pressed on these issues, and they take them on board. In the parliamentary assemblies, of the Mediterranean, we do work on resolutions, but it's not the same process. It does not have that consistency. Member countries do not integrate them in their own legislations once you pass a resolution. It is more what we call cross-national diffusion. Like you will know of a good practice in some other country, and you try to copy it. So one question I'm hurrying, and one question which I make to myself very often is how effective is such an institution that I'm a member in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean in bringing in and impacting the lives of its citizens. And my regret is it is not. It is registering success in bringing in parliamentarians, exposing good practice, dissemination of information. But we are limited. We are limited by the budget, by the funding. We do not have the consistency which another institutions like the Council of Europe has. One good thing is that when there is an institution like the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean, which then becomes regularity, it gains recognition by higher institutions like the United Nations, then other world institutions like the World Bank or the EBRD, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, start recognizing it and start using it as an interlocutor with other countries which they might not feel they have easy access to. Okay, so to nurture civil society, there must be recognition of the organization. That's important, that it has to have esteem, a structure, programs and processes, funding to a certain degree, and consistency. It cannot be periodic like the Commonwealth association, like meets very intermittent. I mean, sometimes they come up with initiatives. Every heads of state meeting, they have a specific project, but it takes every 2 years. I have my own reservations about the follow-up. So, sometimes also we have to seize the moment. What PAM is doing is it has recognized that the most important issue at the moment is the economic crisis, and it has concentrated some of its works with SMEs. Okay? What some other ways of bringing in civil society is harmonization of regulatory processes. There are some bodies like energy regulators, universities, international bodies of sports, professional bodies. There's a willingness of these to come together. And the Council of Europe does very good work. It has a forum for international NGOs. And bringing these peoples and co-drafting resolutions and establishing the work practices and the norms for these is so important in bringing in the work of civil society. And civil society is not only administrative staff. There's some work being done in a lot of cultural issues. So civil society is important. International political institutions can provide civil society by providing a platform for their meetings. They can have structures for multilateral harmonizations, this process of drafting conventions, funding to a certain extent, even like funding for travel or conferences. The promotion of good governance and active citizenship in the program, and visibility to the works of civil society. This will ensure that political institutions do not debate multiculturalism in a vacuum. That is why it's so important to bring in civil society in the work of these political institutions. So I've mentioned how this work is so important. Why is it so important at the end? It's important to integrate civil society from the planning to the implementation, because at the end it will ensure ownership, and it is the ownership which will ensure the success of all your workings. And in certain cases, civil society is even better than governments as implementers of those programs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Honor, Jesmond, for sharing with us your perspective. And we'll open a floor for the audience for at least to ask one question, and then we'll go for a break.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for your lecture. I really regret that we have this time limit. I would like to ask you if Barcelona process have some influence for intercultural relations in Mediterranean region, and if it does, then what was also impact of Arab Spring to this Barcelona process, to your mind?
Unfortunately, there's a similar formation, the Union for the Mediterranean, which should be the institution for the Barcelona process. It hasn't managed to be successful. There is problems with a certain recognition of this Union of the Mediterranean from the Arab countries, because they say that it is not well balanced. There's a stronger representation from the north, from the European side, because it wasn't just countries from the Mediterranean basin, but all Europe and the Arab countries. So they said it was a bit lopsided against the southern basin of the Mediterranean. Unless we get this issue going, it won't be very strong. There are other processes. The European Union has its neighborhood policy, which is a program of funding, which includes not just the Arab countries, but there's part of the budget goes to the countries of East Europe, Belarus, Ukraine, and Georgia, and so forth, and the Arab countries. There is also another process which is called the 5+5 dialogue, which the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean has provided the parliamentary forum for that. And then there are what we call the bilateral initiatives, like certain countries taking initiatives, Italy with Libya, for example, or Spain with Morocco. But it is not as successful as we would like to see, or as it promised to be, and that is unfortunate. We hope that eventually, this thing takes off again, because it is really needed. The Barcelona process tried to tackle the issues from the perspective of trying to sort out the material imbalance, put across substantial budget for making joint projects in environment, in energy with the Arab countries, trying to help them raise their economies, and so by eradicating the imbalance, the conflicts will be solved. That was the thinking, and I think there's a lot of room for that kind of work. Let's hope it takes off.
Thank you very much once again. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me again to express our gratitude to His Honor. And